Hey everyone, Rob Vino of Sports Betting Today, Rob Vino Sports, and of course Sports Memo here Wednesday afternoon, February the 24th. Going to give you a little report on tonight's NBA fantasy basketball. I took a look at three optimized lineups from DraftKings today, guys that they were putting into place. We're going to go over some of my likes in those lineups, some guys that you should be looking towards to put into your lineup tonight in NBA action. Of course, each and every game brings different situations. I think there's a couple of situations tonight with people that DraftKings has listed in various optimal lineups that could be to your benefit to have inside your lineup here tonight or in any of your multiple lineups, however many leagues you play. But let's start off with a couple of guys I noticed right away. Clicked on one of their optimized lineups, and a couple of LA Clippers really stick out here. I think you'd want to have a piece of DeAndre Jordan in this particular matchup. Of course, last night, DeMarcus Cousins, nothing new, but he shredded the Denver Nuggets for 39 points, 9 rebounds. Cousins has been doing that to the Nuggets routinely this season. But the problem with the Nuggets is they just don't have anybody in the middle to stop any center of substance, and certainly DeAndre Jordan fits that bill. He's not toward the high end of centers as far as pay scale is concerned in DraftKings Fantasy tonight. It costs you $7,800 as I look here to play Jordan in your lineup. I would expect double-digit points, double-digit rebounds. Denver, as I mentioned, very thin at center. Jokic starting there right now. Obviously soft is a better word for Denver as far as overall defense is concerned. Let's face it, Mike Malone yesterday came out with the quote that Denver's defense has been left somewhere in the Caribbean. And last night, again, no exception to the rule as Sacramento put up 114 points. So, Cousins scored 39 last night, and understand that he scored 9 from the free throw line in 12 attempts, and certainly nobody's expecting DeAndre Jordan to go to the free throw line tonight and hit 9 of 12. But points, rebounds, blocks, free throws that he can make here tonight. I'm sure he'll visit the line frequently. LA has had the previous some time off here, so you're not talking about playing in high altitude on back-to-back evenings. They should be fresh. I think DeAndre Jordan, if you're looking for a starting center who's not going to hit the highest end of the pay scale tonight, DeAndre Jordan might be your guy. Also for the LA Clippers here, I think you need to look at J.J. Redick, who could have a field day. Right now, J.J. Redick's as hot as any perimeter shooter in the NBA since Blake Griffin went down. I think that was 26 games ago now. The Clippers, their record is 20-6 since he's gone out. Over the span of those 26 games, J.J. Redick has hit 50.3% of his shots from beyond the arc. Tonight, against a very soft Denver defense and a very soft perimeter defense, you have to expect J.J. Redick to have a lot of open looks and to knock those looks down the way he's going. One of the best pure shooters in the NBA. He's certainly making the most of his opportunities right now. It was cold to start the beginning of the season, but red hot right now. As far as shooting guards are concerned, boy, Redick, excuse me, just mid-range as far as salaries go. $5,000 for Redick in this contest tonight against Denver. I would play him. I would definitely play him. You can get him, like I say, on the cheaper end of the spectrum at $5,000 in DraftKings lineups. Two Clippers I would look for tonight in that game against Denver. DeAndre Jordan, J.J. Redick. I think in both instances they bring you a bit of cash value, and as well as that cash value, they're going to put up some numbers against a Denver defense that just hasn't shown up for quite some time now. Also tonight, in looking over some of these lineups that DraftKings puts out there for people who don't use the DraftKings site, or the RotoWire site is really what I should be talking about here, and multiple other sites. You can get your lineup optimized. Just click an optimal lineup button and it'll show you how to fit in under the salary cap and who to play as far as your roster goes. And I've taken, like I say, 3 of these tonight, and we're just picking them apart a little bit. A couple of names also that showed up in these optimized lineups that I really like tonight happen to belong to the Detroit Pistons. Of course, as a handicapper and bettor, I spend my days and nights going over point spread numbers and totals, situations, fundamental matchups, some technical trends, and a lot of that stuff in handicapping applies to fantasy basketball. Last night, for those of you that caught our little excerpt on who to play last night, you walked away with a couple of really good opinions based solely on fundamental matchups. Solely on fundamental matchups. You got Brook Lopez of the Brooklyn Nets, who scored over 30 points last night. Big game for him. Uh, Obviously, there's certain things that you look for as a handicapper when you're playing against the point spread and when you're playing over or under the total that once again do apply here in fantasy basketball. I think that's the case here with the Detroit Pistons. Couple of names to look at if you want the top-notch center tonight. Go ahead and play Andre Drummond. And again, Andre Drummond, he's not a DeMarcus Cousins cost, not prohibitive in that respect. Goes off for $8,000, but one of your higher salaried players in DraftKings lineups. But Andre Drummond against the Sixers tonight, and a Sixers center in Jahlil Okafor, who has not played an ounce of defense for most of the season here, strictly an offensive player. They really don't know what to do with the tandem that they have. He and Nerlens Noel. Noel's been playing the power forward. Okafor plays the center. Whichever one plays there tonight, and it should be mostly Okafor. You get that one-on-one matchup, Drummond against Okafor. He should dominate. Andre Drummond should come away with his typical double-digit rebounds, probably score double-digit points here. I don't think that 2020 against this 76er team is out of the realm of possibility here. Certainly, Pistons frontliners may have to go a little more as far as minutes are concerned nowadays, because they do have some injuries across the front line. But Drummond always gets his minutes. If they're blowing Philadelphia out in the fourth quarter, you may see him disappear to the bench late in the game and maybe not participate in a portion of the fourth quarter. But if this game is anywhere near close, you'll see him for a huge amount of minutes, and I think a lot of points, a lot of rebounds, block shots. Once again, like DeAndre Jordan, when you're talking about Andre Drummond, you're talking about a guy who frequents the foul line but doesn't make a lot of free throws, so you're not going to get all your points unless you have a lucky night based on the free throw line. But whatever he gives you there should be a bonus. I think Andre Drummond, an absolute must in most lineups here tonight. He and DeAndre Jordan, both real good plays at center this evening. When you talk about these Detroit Pistons and you look at a couple of the quotes that came out of both sides heading into tonight's game, they're so different, so polar opposite. It leads you to want to play some of these Detroit Pistons here this evening. Stan Van Gundy, head coach of the Pistons, quoted as saying last night, "We're going to have to play real well right now." He knows they're in a stretch where they have to win some games where wins are possible. They're in a position in that Eastern Division playoff race where they need to accumulate wins. You've got a team that wants to win ball games right now. Reggie Jackson, the starting point guard for the Detroit Pistons, and the player we'll talk about next, actually referred to the Pistons as a desperate team right now. We're a desperate team, was his quote. And certainly, looking at other guys in that locker room, what they've had to say, that this Detroit team is going to play that way. You counter that with Brett Brown of the Philadelphia 76ers. Their head coach was quoted as saying something that's total opposite. He said the energy's not where we need it to be right now. That starting group's really got to get going. We need better defense from that entire group. So, once again, Philadelphia, like the Denver Nuggets, hasn't played defense in quite some time. Last night, in fact, I was on Twitter and commented on the opening total for the Detroit-Philadelphia game. Overnight number came at 208, was immediately bet up as high as 211, backed off a little bit to 210.5. But that was people, bettors, who after watching Philadelphia one more time last night put forth a miserable defensive effort, just blindly running to the window or going to their computer, to their offshore, and playing over the total in Philadelphia games because they only seem to be concerned with one side of the floor right now. Obviously, we know what Philadelphia's MO is. With this rebuilding process, they're not thoroughly interested in winning ball games. So that's why you see at this portion of the season, at this juncture of the season, you see teams like the Sixers just going through motions and not giving intense effort on a defensive end. I don't think that head coach Brett Brown begging for more defense is going to make a bit of difference. They're just not veteran enough, experienced enough, talented enough to defend against some of the better teams in the NBA, and especially when you get one-on-one matchups like Drummond against Okafor. You have to play Drummond, and I think you also have to go ahead and play Reggie Jackson here. Now, Ish Smith, his counterpart for the Philadelphia 76ers, has been one bright spot for the team. There's no doubt about it. Ish Smith has been very, very good. And the head-to-head battle here with Reggie Jackson ought to be a good one. I think both guys have the potential to get theirs here, but I just like the frame of mind from Reggie Jackson as a, you can tell by the quote, somewhat of a leader of this Detroit team. I like that frame of mind that he has right now, where you know if he plays 36, 38 minutes tonight, you're going to get 38 minutes of maximum effort out of him. He's a guy who can score at will when he wants to, gets to the rim whenever he wants, pretty good outside shooter as well. And with Detroit, like I say, a little bit thin in the front court right now, Tobias Harris and Marcus Morris. And we'll have to put in some extra time up front due to injuries. But I like Jackson in the backcourt along with Andre Drummond at center. Those two guys should perform real well. So if you're building a fantasy lineup for this evening, you want to look at the two Clippers that I mentioned, DeAndre Jordan, J.J. Redick. You want to look at those two Detroit Pistons, Andre Drummond, along with point guard Reggie Jackson. Another lineup that I looked at and combed through earlier today presents maybe one edge here. I didn't like a lot of the other names mentioned on here, and I'll list a couple of those for a minute, but I'd like to get through the positives first and guys that you want to have in your lineup. I think DeMar DeRozan for the Toronto Raptors, another guy that you'd really want to have in tonight. Minnesota, again, we're picking on teams that have seen their defenses just go by the wayside, and with only 20 some odd games left, these younger teams that have proven not really to have the defensive cohesiveness to flip a switch and all of a sudden play good defense. These are the types that we're picking on here. When you pick on Denver, when you pick on Philadelphia, when you pick on the Minnesota Timberwolves, all three of those teams basically trying to win by outscoring their opponents. Minnesota's been very, very competitive as of late, and offensively led by Karl Anthony Towns and company. They have been able to outscore some people, but they give up their share of points. And I would not doubt that DeMar DeRozan has a monster game here tonight for the Toronto Raptors. I would look to him as a number one option. His salary in DraftKings fantasy play is $7,300. I would put him almost in any lineup that I had. I think DeRozan's size, inside-outside ability, as far as point scoring is concerned, really is effective in the fundamental matchup against Minnesota. The fact that he can get to the free throw line so often, I think, is a big deal as well. Look for him to fill a lot of the stat columns this evening. So for me, DeMar DeRozan is a play in that contest against Minnesota. A couple of guys I'd be a little iffy with here. I saw where Roy Hibbert is mentioned as a possible cheap option at center for the LA Lakers. Marc Gasol is out for the season, and that's obviously why anybody who plays Memphis from this point on with a capable center, that center should be taken in any fantasy league. And in fact, from a handicapping standpoint, like I said before, these two things kind of go hand in hand, but from a handicapping standpoint, you really do look for teams with dominant centers at this point against the Memphis Grizzlies. But I don't know that Roy Hibbert, even as cheap as he is a real good option here. Just an in and out season once again. I think you might be able to find better players at that price tag without stuffing him in there. Again, I understand the reasoning, and it is sound reasoning. When Marc Gasol's out for the season, you just take a look at that Memphis Grizzly center position, and it's a huge void right now. I just don't know that the way LA plays, their style right now, which has been pretty much up and down the floor, Roy Hibbert doesn't really fit that style. And with the guys that are getting the shots in that offense right now, Roy Hibbert is not really an option. I don't know that I would consider him even at that cheap price. Um, another guy that it comes at with a fairly small price tag that I chose to overlook here is George Hill for Indiana. And Indiana's a real good home team, and I like what Indiana's done. One thing to consider with the Indiana Pacers is the fact that their head coach, Frank Vogel, has tried to get this team to turn the corner toward a more defensive-oriented team. About 2.5 weeks ago, he was tinkering with the lineup. He came up with the combination of Myles Turner at power forward and Jan Mahimi at center. And after that one game, Frank Vogel proclaimed that that was one of the best defensive sets of rim protectors in the NBA. He loved that combination, those two guys, at protecting the rim, interior players who can defend and not let people get through for easy scores. He proclaimed them to be one of the best duos in basketball and vowed that that was the way Indiana was going to go the rest of the way out. And he's stuck to his word. Miami got hurt for a while and was unable to play for in fact, the very next game he didn't play. He didn't play for like 3 or 4 games afterward, but since he's come back, been in the starting lineup, Indiana's been a better defensive team. You saw a real good defensive effort against Miami the other night, a game that went overtime and still stayed under the total. I think Indiana and their pace has become slower than, or it's going to be intended to be slower the rest of the way out than it was earlier in the season. I think Indiana's going to find themselves involved in lower scoring games here, which means a little bit less on the offensive production. Perhaps when these guys come down a bit in value, they'll be more valuable. I don't know that George Hill against the Knicks tonight is such a great option. Remember that the Knicks in the triangle offense are a semi-slow team as well, so I don't like the George Hill suggestion here. And again, obviously this is an optimized lineup that is fit for salary cap. I would search for another guy at $5,500 in that price range. They happen to have Hill filling the slot here in the one I'm looking at. But I wouldn't play George Hill this evening for Indiana. We'll take a look at one more here that I saw. And I think that, for the price, you have to play Mike Conley Jr. tonight. The Memphis Grizzlies, if you were to ask, 100 viewers of NBA basketball what your impression of the Memphis Grizzlies is, they tell you it's a grinded out team, play good defense, very little offense, don't mind milking the shot clock. That's been their persona. It's been how their identity for so long, and long enough to even have their home arena referred to as the Grindhouse. However, how things have changed in Memphis. I just talked about the Marc Gasol injury, which obviously takes one of their slower players out of the lineup, takes a lot of their half-court offense out of the lineup, and they have to find other ways to score points. The Memphis Grizzlies at home this year, and some of this is due to the numbers that the odds makers have put out on this team as far as totals are concerned, but at home, 29 games played by the Memphis Grizzlies this year, 19 of them over the total, 9 unders, 1 push. Memphis is a team that averages over 100 points per game, 100.5 at home this season. Much higher scoring than they've been in the past. The absence of Gasol, like I say, forces them to become smaller, become quicker, find new ways to score points. I really like Mike Conley here this evening at point guard. If you can fit him into your fantasy lineup tonight. Mike Conley for me is a definite go. $6,900 salary here in DraftKings this evening. Mike Conley against this LA Laker team, which again, let's pick on another defense that's youthful, that doesn't play much of it. The backcourt isn't necessarily a brick wall as far as defense is concerned. Mike Conley, very capable point scorer, has to put a little more on his plate now that Gasol is down. I like him at that price tag, $6,900, not that expensive for a starting point guard who can ring up numbers against a team like this one that he's playing tonight, especially at home, where Memphis, like I say, is averaging over 100 points. But they've been good at scoring points for a little while now. Just a change in philosophy with this team, and it's a real change now without Gasol. So Mike Conley's a guy you want to mark down, put him in as a point guard, and a cheap one at that. One more that we'll look at here for this evening, and then we'll go ahead and sign off here. But for the Miami Heat tonight, I've talked about centers a lot. I'll give you some choices here because obviously you need to make choices, especially if you have multiple lineups. But Hassan Whiteside, to me, seems like a good play. $7,600. We talked about a couple of centers here today. DeAndre Jordan with a $7,800 salary. Andre Drummond with an $8,000 salary. So you're talking about three guys separated by $400. But Hassan Whiteside going to play against Golden State tonight. And for the Miami Heat in this particular matchup, he's going to face up against Andrew Bogut, who returned to the lineup last game off an Achilles injury. Andrew Bogut's not 100%. Andrew Bogut doesn't necessarily play a lot of minutes. He can't play a lot of minutes anymore. And Festus Ezeli is hurt as the backup center for Golden State. So you've got Hassan Whiteside with an opportunity here to really have his way inside the paint. Have to believe that Eric Spoelstra and the Miami Heat will attack in the paint against Golden State here tonight. You realize when you play the Warriors that you have to score. But Miami's best option tonight for scoring could be Whiteside. We know he can rebound. I think he's going to fill the stat line tonight. It's very possible out of Hassan Whiteside that you can get 20 points and 14, 15 rebounds in this game, which would be a great line for a center, a little bit better of a free throw shooter than Jordan or Drummond. But his fundamental matchup is what draws me to him tonight. He's been playing very good basketball anyway. I think Hassan Whiteside at this price, worth it. If you can't, if you're right at the cusp of hitting your salary cap and $400 makes the difference to whether you get a lineup in or a lineup out, then substituting Andre Drummond with Hassan Whiteside to make up that $400 difference, I think is a good move. Golden State, they free flow up and down the floor. You're going to get plenty of opportunities to score. I think Whiteside, out of all the Miami starters, has the best matchup fundamentally tonight on the floor. So I look for Hassan Whiteside as a player to stick into your daily fantasy lineup here tonight. So there you go. That covers some guys that I like tonight. Hopefully you have success with your DraftKings or FanDuel or wherever you play your fantasy basketball, NBA style here tonight. Hopefully you have some success with the picks we've recommended here. We'll be back tomorrow. Go over some stuff, maybe some handicapping stuff tomorrow. Talk about the Combine, the NFL Draft, all kinds of things to be talking about right now. Of course, Major League Baseball season opening up soon. 4 plays from Rob Vino Sports. Go ahead and go to the homepage at sportsmemo.com. You can get my plays for this evening as far as sides and totals are concerned. But for now, that's your fantasy update for tonight. This is Rob Vino Sports Betting Today, saying thanks and good luck with all your plays tonight.